recorded, and we'll share the slides from today's session to all of you at the end as well. Really look forward to learning more from you and giving you a little bit of a taster on what we do here at the HSN. So over to yourself, Sarah.
Thank you, Will. So thank you, everyone. It's really good to have people here today. What I'm going to do today is just there's a bit quick agenda on the screen there. So we've already done the first bit. So Will has said his welcomes and introductions. That's lovely. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through some of the sort of theory and the sort of top tips around spread that we have been using in our work around supporting programs, innovators, various different people to spread their good ideas, their approaches. Really, we've been really trying to work out how this really works, because spread is not as simple as some people think it is. Spread and scale is really not that straightforward. So we've done quite a lot of work at looking at different theories, different models. We've been supported by an organisation called the Billions Institute, which I'll talk about in a bit more. So I'll go through some of that, give you an outline of some of the theory. We'll have a chance for you guys to all talk to each other a bit and share some of your experiences and some of your thoughts around spread and some of the things you're hearing. And hopefully the other thing I'd like you to do is, as you go through, could you just have a think about, as you're listening to what's being said and as you're talking to each other, think about what support might be helpful to you to take some of this going forward, because that'll be sort of the next stage of this, is that we can have just a bit of an overview of some of the approaches that we've got, and then hopefully going forward, as you need support, we can think about how some of that might be put in place. So at the end of all of this, we'll come back and have a chance to discuss that. So, as I mentioned, we've worked with an organisation called the Billions Institute in the States. They are really specialists at large scale change. They have developed a model called the Model for Unleashing, which they've done in a very practical way. And I think it's really important that the approach that they've taken and that we are building on in some of our work has really come from practice, which I think is so important for spread and scale, because it's very much about how you work with people as much as exactly what you do. It's very much about relationships, and it's about the complexity of working in different settings. So in particular, there were two enormous campaigns in the States that they worked on, and that this model came from. One was the 100,000 Homes campaign, which Becky Margiotta, one of the directors, they sort of rehomed, and we're talking sustainable housing, over 100,000 people across the States in the space of 3 years. And the point about this is that where the model came from was very much that she developed an approach that worked in how to do this in Times Square in New York, and then took that model and spread it across different communities, different states, all the way across the United States. And as she went along, she learned about how to make that happen. How do you take an approach that you know works and adapt it and make it work in other settings and help other people to take it on and to expand it? Where they talk about unleashing, it's people who have taken something and taken it on as their own thing. And that's the way that you really scale something good. And the 100,000 Lives campaign, which was the Institute of Health Improvement in the States, so that was a patient safety campaign, which again was something that was very clinical, so it's a different setting, but it was an approach to patient safety, which was developed in one setting. And again, they found ways of spreading it so that it was adopted across the United States. So again, what they've done is they've developed a model on the back of something that was very practical, that they've really tried and tested. And what they talk about is large scale change being the exponential increase in impact that in most cases transcends the boundaries of your organization. So they talk about unleashing. They talk about the fact that you can make a certain amount of impact with your thing in your setting, but to make it have a bigger impact beyond your setting, to have it taken on in other ways, is something much bigger than that. And you need to be working in a way that enables other people to do the thing that you do in a way that works for them. And when they're talking about all of this, we're working from the basis, as you know, most of the things we do, pretty much everything we do we're working in complexity. The problems we're seeking to solve are complex. They're entrenched over time. They're not easy problems to solve. Interventions, this is really important. And we're working from the basis that interventions might work in some places, but it's highly unusual for just to be able to cut and paste to all places with similar results. And that's one of the big mistakes that people make, is you think to yourself, oh, I do this and it's fabulous and it works really well and I think it's great. So therefore everybody else will think it's great and they will do it. And it's incredibly unlikely that that's going to happen. It's very, very unusual. And there are certain things that you have to do and have to adapt in order to help that to happen. And the last bit is understanding that programs are perishable, funders can be fickle. I mean, as part of the complexity, really, that we really need to be adaptable in the approaches we take when we're trying to work with other people and we're trying to spread and scale our ideas. And this is, if you take nothing else away from today, I always think this is the most important thing that I really want you to take away. So, yeah, I'm not saying you can all go to sleep after this, but the bad question is, how can I get all these people to do what I want them to do? Okay, so that is not a way to really help spread and scale. It's a way to, you know, sometimes it happens, sometimes people do what you want them to do, but it's not a sustainable way of unleashing and allowing your thing to really expand into the world. The better question is, of course, how can I help all these people to do what they want to do? And this is really important, and it's difficult to do. It requires an in-depth understanding of the people you're working with, of the context you're working with, of the problems they're facing, as well as just an understanding of what it is that you're doing that can help these people. Okay, so this is that shift, I think, is just really, really important. Yeah, right, okay, so now I'm going to talk to you about chocolate cake. I should have said at the beginning, there's various foodstuffs in this presentation. Apologies if you're hungry. But throughout this, we're talking about chocolate cake. I'm also talking about spread. I'm talking about turkey sandwiches later on. But I'm going to start with the chocolate cake bit because, and the reason I talk about chocolate cake is because of the need to understand where spread fits. When are you ready for spread? Okay. So we work with a lot of different project innovators, various people who come to us and say that they want to spread what they're doing, that they're ready for spread. Many times they're not actually really ready for spread. Where they're up to is they're either prototype, so that's the very first blob on the left there, or there might be a pilot. You need really to have prototyped and piloted before you get ready for spread. And the chocolate cake analogy I'm going to go through will explain this in a bit more depth. The thing is though, we've realized over time, when we run spread academies, where we go through some of this on a 3-day course, it's very intensive and it's fantastic. And it's like this, but you know, times 3 days. There's loads more to what I'm going to say today in the Spread Academy. And we ask people to come to that with a project that's ready to spread. We have had people who come along who we then find are not in that position. But that doesn't mean we've realised that it's not useful learning, because the stuff it's helpful to know about spread when you're at an early stage. And you'll see why as we go through this. There's all sorts of understanding about context and the types of information you need in order to get to be spread ready, that it's helpful to understand before at earlier stages as well. So here we go, chocolate cake. So I made the world's most perfect chocolate cake. It was really delicious. Everybody loved it. And I made it in my completely perfect kitchen. It was brand new. It was all gorgeous. I had a really sort of one of those strange hob things by the looks of it in the background. It was all sparkly and clean. That's not my kitchen. And then I used very expensive raw organic chocolate. So this was the best chocolate that you could get. It was really amazing. I used hand-carved bamboo utensils, which, you know, really everybody has to have those in order to make a perfect chocolate cake. And the whole thing was helped and put together by my happy, smiling children and their lovely friends. And they helped stir the bowl, and it was all lovely, and we had a great time. And as a result of doing those things, I made this really perfect chocolate cake. So that was the first time I made the chocolate cake, and it worked within that setting and with those different things. And my chocolate cake was so good that it won awards. There was an evidence base which said this was the best chocolate cake in the planet, and also that it did things like improve well-being. So everybody wants to improve well-being. My chocolate cake improved well-being. Everyone thought fabulous. They also wanted to make the chocolate cake. So I gave them the recipe for my chocolate cake. I said, this is how you make it, and this is what you need to do. And they, of course, had slightly different kitchens to me, still very weirdly clean and new, but they had different kitchens. And they used different types of utensils in different colours. And somebody used really cheap cooking chocolate from Morrison's. And their children and their children's friends were nowhere near as nice and lovely and peaceful and beautiful as my children. And so as a result, what happened was we had some of these that came out the other end when they tried to make the chocolate cake. And some of the chocolate cakes look like this, but some of them actually look like this. So the important bit here was to understand, they'd taken my recipe, I knew how it worked, and that was brilliant. So that was the first bit of knowing that it works. Then I gave it to them, So why was it that these chocolate cake didn't turn out to be the same way? So at that point, you really need to understand what are the key things that are needed. And that's what you can understand from having other people try out your chocolate cake recipe. So what we discovered, for example, was the type of oven does matter. We decided it didn't need the shards to be perfect, but it didn't need 3 layers, but it did need the shards. I mean, that we really needed good quality chocolate. We decided on what temperature made it work best. And we realized that you really didn't need those smiling over the top children to make a perfect chocolate cake. So you're beginning to get an idea of the different elements that you need to really help your thing to spread. So what are the key bits which are really important to help this to spread? Okay, so the first bit, so when I made the chocolate cake in my perfect kitchen, is about doing a prototype. That's the first time I did it and I knew that it worked. So the answer to the question is, does it work? Yes, it works because I've done it and I know how to do it. But then in the pilot, you were asking, does the innovation work or the chocolate cake recipe work under a variety of different circumstances? And for spread, we needed to know what adaptations are needed for different contexts and how can we make this work well for most people. So when you're get to the spread point, in a way, you need to have had that experience and that understanding of how you got there, so that you can then be adaptable and help other people to pick it up in different circumstances. Because what got you here won't get you there. So me making a perfect chocolate cake is not going to help other people to make a perfect chocolate cake. Part of it will, but certainly not all of it. Okay, so it's about understanding where you are up to with your project, with your innovation, with whatever it is you're working with. Are you prototyped? Are you pilot? Are you spread? And what do you need to know in order to help you get beyond just you knowing how to do it within your context? Right, okay, we're going to come to the first breakout, which is great. So what I want to do in these breakouts, I think we're going to do seven minutes, I think Sarah is going to put in there. I'm very aware of the fact that because everybody will want to talk to each other and as in share who you are and all the rest of it. So I want to have a quick session for people to say hello, who they are in your breakout rooms really quickly. And then I want you to talk about what have your experiences been so far when trying to get people to bake a version of your chocolate cake. Okay, so in other words, when you've so far in the work that you've been doing, what's happened when you've tried to do this? When you've talked to other people about your idea, about your innovation, about your project, what have your experiences been? Where are the challenges you've faced so far? What have the positives been? Okay, and I am going to ask Sarah, I think, to put you all in breakout rooms. So a little thing should come up on your screen to say go to breakout room something. There you go. Mine says breakout room 2. And Will is in one room and he's going to be facilitating one room and I'm going to facilitate the other. So if you just go to your rooms and then we'll come back, be pulled out again in 7 minutes, if that's okay. Thank you.
Oh. Hi. Hi.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. There we go.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Morning.
Oh, hi, Patrick.
Hi.
Hello. Hey, Rebecca.
How are you?
Everybody okay? Right. I'm going to try and stick us to time here, keep us to time, but I do want everyone to have a quick chance to say hello and who they are. So should we go around in a quick circle, starting with who's on my right? Patrick. So if everybody could just say who they are and what they've come along today with, that would be really great. So it's quickly, just 20 seconds if you can.
I'll be incredibly quick. I'm Patrick. Digital social prescribing. That's
great.
all you need to know. Yeah.
I'm sorry, the other bit is where you are. That would be really helpful.
Where do I live? For example?
Where are you working, sort of thing?
I live in London. Our project is in Berkshire and we're piloting it in Devonshire.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, great. Nikki. Yes, Nikki. Hello.
Me. Oh, which one?
Nikki.
Yeah. Nikki Dix. I run a charity based in Weybridge in Cornwall called Intentional Health, which is a 10-week community-based program that was designed to be replicated by and run by local church volunteers. So not draining public health services, but actually trying to prevent and improve lifestyle disease and reduce health inequalities.
Great, thank you. Tammy Harvey?
Hi, I'm Tammy. I'm working with Smartline on a project where we are going to hopefully be testing a device to help people collect health data in Camborne Redruth area.
Great, thank you. Adam?
Good morning, I'm Adam Pearson from Newquay Hypnotherapy, based in Newquay. And I'm afraid I've got two innovations I'm trying to think about at the same time.
Okay.
One is automating the hypnotherapy process using a chatbot. So that's a technology challenge. And the other one is building a community of practice of wellbeing influencers.
Oh, great, brilliant.
Through events, festivals, trying to interactions, whatever works to build that community.
Brilliant. That's an important part of all of this as well. And Baines, you're Becky, aren't you? I know your name.
Oh, yes, don't know if that's good or bad. Yes, so Seb and Hannah also, we work on the EPIC project, which is e-health and productivity and innovation in Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. So we help support innovators, whether that's academic research or otherwise. So we're interested in how we can best support innovators who come to us in terms of spread and development.
Brilliant. Alison?
Hi, I'm Alison Flanagan. I'm an ex-GP now, setting up some work with remote personal and health coaching. I'm based in Cornwall and I've been working with the social prescribing team in St Austell.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, we're doing some work with them as well. Emma and Zoe, just want to quickly say hello as well.
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm from the University of Exeter, based in Truro, and I'm on the Smartline project, so supporting businesses to develop innovations to help digital health and wellbeing.
Hi, I'm Zoe and I'm a business support coordinator at
So yeah, Zoe's a business support coordinator from the HSM, but I don't know if anyone could hear that, but I couldn't. Right, so we now have 3 minutes, everyone. This is super quick. Who wants to just quickly tell me something that they think has worked when they're trying to get people interested in their idea? So what has helped? What do you think is important in terms of spreading your thing so far? What experiences have we got?
I think tailoring the message to that population specifically, and what the perceived benefits are for that group. So rather than a generic message, it's very much what the product could bring to them, whether that's improving efficiency, saving time, or costs.
Yeah, that's a good one. Was it Nikki put your hand up?
So I used previous experience to replicate something in a new setting. So it's sort of translating learning from one field into another, and trying to think about when designing the program, what does that person need if they've only got a DVD player and a room full of people? And also trying to work out what are the non-negotiables that can't change versus what can be flexible and actually makes that new version even tastier than the first version, kind of thing.
Yes, which is pretty much what we're going to go on to next. So, I think you can do it for me. Yeah, anybody else got any experiences of things? Oh, Alison?
I was just thinking, like a really simple, clear message. It's got to, people will switch off very quickly if it seems complicated, but just a one sentence summary.
Yeah.
And that's easier said than done, isn't it?
It is, definitely. Yeah, it's a really difficult thing to do. Has anybody else got anything to add to those?
Yeah, excuse me. I would add opportunities to get face-to-face with people.
Yeah.
So conferences. Chats. Do things over rather than trying to do everything through formals. Gets different quality of information.
Yeah, I think that we're getting. Okay? Yeah, I can hear that. You're breaking up a bit, but ironically, when you're talking about the need to do things face to face. But yeah, I get your point there.
But one other thing, not assuming you know the answer, so remaining curious, which I think again is quite a challenge because you always think, oh, it'll be like this, but it might not be.
Yeah. Who's got something else to add in the last 30 seconds?
I think a lot of the products we've seen as well, those that have been designed in co-production with all stakeholders involved, seem to carry greater weight in terms of its applicability. And anecdotal quotes also seem to go down quite well. It's not always, it's one of the stories and the narratives also seem to be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. It's quite interesting because everything, I think we're about to be pulled out in a minute, but this is all about how we work with people, isn't it, when it comes down to it?
Yeah.
Which is the central point of everything, really. I don't know if anyone's got anything to add in 5 seconds. No. 3, 2, 1.
Sorry for that. I think we got cut off a little bit there. If people were in mid-flow, do apologies. It's always a challenge with these things. Hi, Sarah. Back over to you. I think we're, yeah.
That was super speedy. I don't know what that was like for you, but it was like,
we pretty much had our chance to go around the room, so we're learning here. So the next one we'll try and, now we've done the intros, we might be able to get into a bit more, but we were just getting into some of the challenges there. So.
Okay, well, I think we can probably continue the same one, and we've got another breakout session at the end. So if I zoom through some of this stuff, we'll have a bit more time, because I think it's always nice for people to talk to each other, isn't it?
No, that was really good.
So we might add an extra bit of time to the next one, Sarah. If by the time we get to the end, we've got some spare time. I think from our side, I mean, I wasn't going to do the whole massive feedback thing, but it was interesting that a lot of the people in the group were picking up on things that we're going to be talking about now, but that especially the importance of the relationships with people, and a lot of the things about how you work with people and make it work for them, which is what I was saying earlier about the, you know, helping your thing to work for other people. So I think that was a key theme that came out of ours. I'm just going to try and share my screen again. It seems to have stopped. Right, let me click the right button. Why won't it let me do the thing? There we go. Right, done that one. So I'm now just going to move us on to some of the key spread messages. So as I said, the model for unleashing from the Spread Academy that we use, and which we use other bits of other things as well. But there is more to that than I'm sharing with you today. There is actually a whole component which is about your own. It's a bit of a sort of it's a bit of self-discovery kind of work as part of this as well, which I won't go into today because it's intense and it's really important and it takes time. But that bit is all about understanding your own intentions, what you're bringing to the work that you're doing, and about the idea that you yourself, especially if it's your baby, as it were, that you can get in the way of spreading something, that you have your own feelings about the product or the innovation or your project, and that your own approach to how you feel about that can actually impact on some of the spread work. So we do quite a lot of work on that. We also work a lot with teams and understanding how teams work together, because that's another thing that's really important to the spread work. But I'm not going to go, what I'm going to do is just get through 4 main areas that we also, the sort of more technical aspects of it, as it were. So the first one is about really understanding your intentions and your key ingredients. We'll go into that in more detail, go into each of these in more detail. So that, like I say, about your intentions, where you're coming from, but also your key ingredients, so you can understand what are the bits that you really need to spread. The second bit, which we talked about in our breakout room, I think, which is important, is understanding the context you're going to be working with, who people are, how they work, what's good for them, what doesn't work for them. So it's so important, and none of us ever put enough time into that. It's one of the things I'm always battling for in the spread work that we do in the HSN is, you know, we need to put more time into really doing the groundwork on that stuff, because it just helps things to fly. If you and it just helps you build those relationships. It helps you do things that are helpful for other people. But there's a lot of work that we do around setting a clear and compelling aim. Clear and compelling, so clear as in, so you know where you're going. There has to be we are going to get to X by X time. It's really important to have that, so that you know what to measure, but you also are all behind it, and there's a sense of excitement about meeting that aim. We'll talk a bit about that a bit more. And then there's a whole bit about identifying the most suitable methods to work with people to help them to do what they want to do. And there's a tool, there's an approach called Many Ways to Many, and an app that they use, and I'm going to share some of that with you as well. So the first one, about really understanding your intentions and your key ingredients. So about another food stuff here, this is the turkey sandwich. And I find the turkey sandwich to be something that people find really difficult to do. I love facilitating people to do turkey sandwiches, because it's really fascinating when you start to unpick your project and how difficult that can be. The basic premise of it is, if you have a turkey sandwich, in fact, if we were in a room, I would ask somebody to answer this question, but what do you need to make a turkey sandwich? You basically just need bread and turkey. Okay, everything else that you might put into it, and I'm aware that not everyone would eat a turkey sandwich and it's rather American, but you get the drift. Anything else you put into it is actually optional. You don't really need to put all the other stuff in it, like mayonnaise or salad or all the rest of the stuff, but but you have to have turkey and you have to have bread. And the exercise is really to focus on what your turkey is. So what is the bit that is sacred and cannot be modified? What's the actual intervention? So whatever it is you're doing, it's probably not all the multiple parts of it. It probably really, if you want other people to take it on, you need to make it as adaptable as possible, which is something else we just talked about in the breakout room. And in order to make it as adaptable as possible, you need to free up some of those elements of it that you think are the most important part. If you really stop to think about it, all the bits are not the most important part. So this, as I say, this is a process that we go through, that we facilitate and workshop people to go through this, is to really understand what is the key thing that you want to spread. What is the main element of it? They talk about the moral obligations and what you are morally obligated to get to everyone who could possibly benefit, and that is the bread. So that's about thinking about your intention and what it is you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to change. What are you really thinking you're going to make a difference with through this thing? You really need to understand that. And there's a lot of work we do for that, which is about understanding the problem. So none of us are very good at doing problem analysis, but again, it's really important. So we start with people and we say, what is this problem that you're trying to, what's the problem that you think you are solving with this thing? Really understand what that problem is, and then really understand what the key thing is within your project or innovation that will help change that, make a difference to that problem. Okay, so that's just, I'm giving you an overview. As I say, there's future we can do probably more support around this sort of stuff, but this is just to explain what it is. We then talk about the different things that are optional and can be adapted. And you'll see here that they're sort of in the condiment. So what are those other things that you add in that make a difference, but which actually really aren't necessary? So you can give people that as an option. So when they want to do your thing, you say, well, you can do it this way, you can do it that way. If you have this, you can make it work in this way. And it helps people to adapt, to adopt things more readily. And then the last bit is on this next slide, actually, is about, I think a lot of people will have know this, it's sort of the Rogers spread, they call it. So it's the idea of the innovation, adoption of innovation, how spreadable your idea is. And there are key attributes, which I think many of you will know already, that facilitate adoption. So there's that idea of the relative advantage. So what advantages is it giving people? Is it compatible to a system? Is it simple? Is it trialable? That's something that people find quite tricky, but it's important. Can people just try this out without fully committing or without changing a full system? Is it observable? Can you really see a change? And then we add in about whether it's scalable. So scale and spread are slightly different. If you think about spread as in terms of getting it beyond your boundaries, scalable is about, can it then expand and become bigger within a different setting? And the adaptability is just so important. And from my experience, that really does make a huge difference. So that's the first one. It's really about understanding what your intervention is. It's about understanding your own intentions and really understanding how you can make your thing work for other people. The next thing is about understanding the other people, about the understanding the context you're going to be working with, who people are, how they work, what's good for them, what doesn't work for them. And in particular, I think a lot of you will have seen this as well. We talk about this understanding of who the different, of the innovation curve. So who are your innovators, who are your early adopters? You know, who are those people who you'll just talk to and they'll go, yep, I'll give it a go. You know, they were just willing to give everything a go. But at the other end of the scale, the laggards, you've got those who will just fight against it and will be dragging their feet. And we always think that we're quite good in the NHS. Well, I mean, generally we seem to be quite good at going for the far end. There's sort of this idea that if we get to the laggards, if we manage to win them over, then we'll get everybody else on board. But in fact, that's sort of banging your head against a brick wall. You're sort of better off going for the early bit and getting it and building it up that way, always bearing in mind where the others are further down the curve. But if you focus on those who are really willing to give it a go, you can also learn from them as you go along about what the barriers are to adoption, all those kinds of things, but then help you think about those people who are further along the curve. The other thing we do a lot of, again, this is a very brief overview because this is a huge thing to do, but this iceberg, which is about analysis of systems, really, it's about understanding what it is that you're seeing above the water. So what are the behaviors? What's the situation that you're facing? And really understanding the context in terms of how have those events been produced. And this is a really massive exercise because what you do need to do is you look at what the context is and you really start to break that down and understand, so what are the behaviors that have caused that to happen? What are the parts of the system, the organizational processes, the different patterns of ways of working? how people relate to each other. What are those things that are creating the context within which you're going to be working? And underneath that, we also talk about having mental models, about really understanding what the assumptions and beliefs are that are shaping the system within which you're working. And this kind of thing, I mean, as I say, it's a huge thing to do, but it's really important and very valuable. Once you start to look at a situation, you try and really unpick what the meaning is behind it and where it comes from. It means you're not always just working at a surface. You're not just taking things at face value. When you're trying to spread your idea into a new context, you're not just taking, oh, well, I can see that's happening, therefore this is the way to respond. You need to look at what is happening and why it's happening. What are the things that are influencing it underneath? So that's another thing we do a lot of. Moving on to the bit which is more about evidence and aim. So we do a lot of work around aim setting. Some is not a number, soon is not a time is a really important quote. We also talk about being tight on aims and loose on everything else. So really about identifying what your aim is. Where are you trying to get to? Because once you've done that, it really helps you to plan, as I think you probably all know. It also helps to keep people engaged in what you're doing. So we talk about using evidence and stories in particular, I'll come on to that in a minute, but really engaging people through evidence and stories, and the more qualitative narrative stuff about anecdotes and the stuff that's really telling you why your thing is working in a different setting. It will really help to engage people. And one of the things that, that the Billions have done a lot of is around tracking progress. So using data in a way that's useful to the setting within which you're working. So you're not just tracking towards an aim and then using that data and taking it away. It's about allowing people to use it for themselves. And this is just an example that this was the 100,000 homes campaign. So they were tracking their data, and they realized that when they got to February 12, if they kept on the same trajectory, they were only going to get to like 30,000 homes. And so that's just a really clear, I'm sure a lot of you know this, but it's about really tracking your data as you're going along in terms of where your reach is going, the numbers of people you've taken on, the number of people engaged in your product and your innovation. So it really helps you to make decisions about where to go next. And then this thing about visible progress, when they did the campaign across the whole of the state, they got all their different teams involved in trying to meet their aim of 100,000. So everybody who was all the way across the country, anybody who was involved in any version of the 100,000 home campaign all knew about the aim. They all kept up to date with the figures about how they were going to progress, and it helped spur people on, and they celebrated the success as they moved, as the numbers went up and up and up. And it was a way of tracking, of keeping everyone on track, but it was also a way of really engaging people in the actual campaign. And the last one is about identifying suitable methods. So there's a thing, I'll show you in a minute, there's a thing called many ways to many, about how you move along the spread sort of ladder, as it were. We talk a lot about joining people together. So there's huge value in bringing people together to create collaboratives of change. So people who are interested in whatever your thing is, bringing them together so they can learn from each other as they try and take it on, as they spread. You can help people to really have those conversations, which will help them to engage. Learning and adapting as you're going along, learning about what works, what doesn't, looking at rapid cycles of change. So that whole thing about keeping up with how things are working as you're spreading something is really important. And then this bit I'll come to now. So we work through the stages of awareness raising, will building, and behavior change. So these are the three columns that they talk about with how to get from here to there. And I'm aware that lots of different people have different frameworks for spread with variations on these columns. But this is the one they talk about. So the first stage they talk about is awareness raising. So you start right at the beginning with your innovation, your idea. And the first bit is really about letting people know that it's there in a way. It's about, we talk about communications a lot in this, and about how do you get people to really engage in a way which is means that they will keep moving forward. So the key thing with the awareness is not just to send out 1 million emails, because emails might work, but in fact you need slightly more than that. You need to be thinking when you're putting your communications together, when you're engaging people in different ways, what's going to help them to make a decision to actually engage and take this on, which is where the will building comes in. So there's something in there around you're building awareness through publications, through training, through conferences, but you're always thinking about the next step. You're always thinking about how we're going to get people to have the will to take this on. How are we going to make it fit to them? And there's something in there, they talk about the storytelling, so really engaging people in a way that makes sense to them. There's about framing it within their own experience. There's the importance of using evidence to show, well, this has worked in that way, so how can we make it work for you in this sense? There's a whole load of things at the bottom of their list, which I always think is quite funny. But actually, regulation, punishment, humiliation, and crisis, as we've seen recently, are all good ways of getting people to do things. Not that we want to do those, but it's worth pointing out about those different elements of how, how do you build will? Just think about those things. I mean, particularly if you think about COVID, we've been doing a lot of work looking at learning from COVID and what's happened. People have jumped to it and done all sorts of things really quickly, haven't they, in response to a crisis. That's not a way you would ever want things to be, but just thinking about how the behaviours have changed, I think is quite interesting. And the last one is about behaviour change. That's about sustainability. It's about when your thing becomes part of somebody else's way of doing things. And if you're setting up collaboratives, communities of practice, it allows people to continue to share their experiences, which is really helpful in terms of helping people to keep moving forward and to really adopt and to make it part of their system, rather than it just becoming a sort of flash in the pan, something they're trying out. If you want something to be really in part of someone's organisational system, there's that whole bit around behaviour change, which is extremely important to think about. And you need to be thinking about the sustainability and the behaviour change bit as you're doing that early bit of just raising awareness about what you're doing. Your aim is to get to not just having somebody try it out, but for it to be really part of whatever their ways of working. So you need to be thinking beyond. And the bit about behaviour change, as I say, it's about giving people the space for it to be part of what they do. They have actually got well, they say it's an app. I always think this, it's not an app. It's a website. And if you go to the Billings Institute website there at the bottom, there's quite an interesting sort of tool where it asks you all these questions, as you can see on the left there, asks you where you're up to, asks you a few other questions, and then it gives you some examples of different types of tools that you may use that link to here. So and the thing I find really good about this is the descriptions it gives you. So, for example, you see it says Breakthrough Series Collaborative Model. That's one of the results it gave as response to those questions. And then if you click on there, it gives you a link to a description plus a link to a whole load of resources which will help you with these different models. And it's actually, it's a really, there's a really useful resources actually, so it might be worth looking at those. Okay, and this almost getting to the point where you can have another chat actually, but so this is another really important bit. It's the #1 mistake of leading change is we try to spark motivation with information. If you want to spark change, feeling is the fuel, find the feeling and show visible progress. So I think we talked about this briefly in our breakout room as well. It's the fact that how you get even things like your communications right is just so important. And it's as much about, as we talked about, evidence, you need the evidence, but it's about how do you engage people? How do you get them to feel that this is something they want to do, that they really understand what difference it can make? So find the feeling and show visible change. We're very good at doing the one on the left there. We analyse, we think, we change. I think that's how we think things work, is that we analyse a situation, we think about what to do, and then we make it change. But something about spreading things and spreading new ideas and change as a sort of a complex thing that humans find very difficult to do, which requires us to be more about seeing what's going on, to be really feeling it, and that then supports the change. There's a slightly different way of thinking there. Right, so I've just done a bit of a marathon talk there. Now I'm very aware of the fact that I've whizzed through things. As I've said, we will be sharing the slides, and yeah, there'll be more to come in terms of support going forward if you're interested in various things. What I think we're going to do another breakout. What time is it? Oh, I think we're okay actually.
We've got a bit of time.
Maybe we've got time for a 10-minute. I don't know, can you change the timing, Sarah, on the breakouts, possibly?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll do that now.
Yeah, so I think we've probably got time for, if we do 10 minutes, that would be good. Just thinking through how to engage people in particular to enable spread. What have you found works well? what hasn't worked so well. So it's almost an extension of the first conversations you were having. And I think if there's, you know, if there's anything else you want to pick up on or discuss from what I've just been saying, then do feel free to do that, or to continue your previous conversations as well if you didn't have a chance to finish it. But really thinking about how do we engage people around whatever it is we want to do. And Sarah will put you in breakout.
Hi.
Unmute. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, I thought we were going to be different people. They were supposed to
point, Sarah.
They were supposed to shake us all up. However, as I thought that, I suddenly thought, actually, probably better to continue the previous conversation. So that's actually a good thing that didn't happen. Great. Okay, so we talked in our last breakout. We did start talking a bit about engagement and how you worked with people. I just wondered if we wanted to continue on that conversation, or if there's anything you want to pick up on from that last little block of presentation.
I think probably I was reflecting on it and thinking the sort of human dimension of things is both the strength and the challenge.
Yeah.
I think some of the things that work best are speaking to people in rich ways, but that's really time consuming.
Yeah.
And so to really understand what audiences want, it takes a lot of time and it's very easy to assume, you know. And it differs massively. Really,
it's always different depending on who you're talking to as well. So
yeah. It's very rich data to sort of digest as well.
Yeah, the communication is one of my biggest challenges, because I can have a one-to-one with somebody and you can be curious, you can ask questions, you can understand, and actually word of mouth tends to be a really good way of sharing what you're doing. But trying to put that on a scale, I really struggle with. How do I communicate when I haven't got that ability to read someone's responses or to follow a path that they are specifically interested in and therefore address their questions? How do you do that en masse?
And I think having the really clear intention makes that easier, because it means you got a much more focused, sorry, I've got a bit of a cough going on, a much more focused set of things to discuss. So if you can really keep that narrow, then the richness of the conversation is what takes the time. And you can be really clear about your intentions and what you're talking to people about.
I think the challenge for me in that is I'm looking at holistic lifestyle health. So actually, that's different for everybody, and that's one of the strengths of programs, in that it allows individuals to get what they need out of it, but then to market that and share that in a way that everyone understands there is something for them, but it might not look like, their chocolate cake, their turkey sandwich won't look like the next door neighbour's turkey sandwich, but that's absolutely fine as long as it's got the turkey and the bread for them.
Yeah.
How to communicate that?
I think, well, my initial view on that would be, identifying what the turkey is, because it is the important bit. And then you demonstrate what has worked with that turkey and with the different, how people have adapted it and what it's meant for other people's lives. I think it does take time. This is the thing. I mean, that type of work is so important.
Yeah.
And will make the difference, because that's how you end up spreading stuff, is actually through people wanting to engage in it.
Yeah.
And that stuff, and that's what I'm saying about none of us put enough time into that. We think there's an easy shortcut to it, but there probably isn't, in most, unfortunately.
And it's managing the tension between being able to put the time into that when you're still really small and still doing everything else that needs to be doing, and that's a constant tension that stops you from growing as well as enables you to grow. And how do you know when you do that and when you don't? That's the sort of situation I'm in. So we've got a spread, but it's very slow, very small and slow and organic. We've got 50 partners around the country, but it's only me in the office, so I'm trying to literally do everything, and it's communicating. So and it's been okay with that. I think that's what I'm learning. It's like, actually, just stay small.
And it's about being realistic about that as well. In fact, you can decide to just stay small. The other thing is to think about what can you be gathering from the people who you are working with, where it's spread to already. Yeah. How is that working? And what can you get back from that in a way which is not very time consuming for you? So how can you make that happen? So
That's
you have
focused, yeah.
Sorry?
And that's the systems focused stuff that you were talking about.
Yeah, how can you really, and how can you bring even bring people together so they can have a meeting every so often, and you can get stuff out of that which you can then feed into your next round of trying to engage other people. You know, stuff like that where you can think about if you have to focus on what the useful bits are, and then so you're not running around trying to do everything, but have a really clear focus on, okay, this is what's going to work. If I get people to, what I need to know is, why have they taken this up? Because I need to know that so that I can help get other people engaged. What do they think of it? Give me some stories. If you could even do that in like a 1-hour session with them, where you could sort of facilitate a conversation, and then you can then use that to develop stuff to engage other people.
And that's the bit I haven't got spreading yet.
Yeah.
The other thing we found quite important in terms of spreading is making sure you're speaking to the right person that can make decisions within that organisation. Trying to kind of penetrate, or at least know who to speak to, and often that can save a bit of time. But
yeah, that's part of the contextual understanding bit is really, I mean, and that stuff does take time, but it's so important. And the other bit is, once you've done that, is working out the best ways to communicate with those people.
Yeah.
And again, as we said before, everyone's different, and there'll be different ways, different things that will work for different people. But all of this stuff, it takes time, but it's worth doing because it's what helps you get there in the end.
I'm just trying to. Sorry, Alison, you go ahead.
It's okay, go.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. So I was just trying to.
Is that me or Patrick Robo?
Hey, Patrick.
Can't hear you.
It's got sound.
Maybe Alison should go.
Long time.
I'm going to put it in the chat.
Okay.
We can't hear you.
I think my internet's not very good, so I'll try again. But
Perfect now.
Okay,
maybe turn your
good
video.
now.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Can now.
And now, turn your video off, see if that works.
Gone.
Oh no, it's photo now.
There we go.
I don't think my internet is terrific. Can you hear me? Okay now.
Yes,
okay. Get rid of me. My face. Yeah, trying to say fake is that like when you're very early, like not working.
No, it's working.
Oh. Okay. All right. Last go. Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
I think basically approaching stuff in a spirit of co-creation when you're early will help you more than just trying to almost sell something in. It's a bit sort of more indirect. So when we've done well, it's always been, and it's a long lead time, right? It's always been about, can you validate something for us? We've got a few ideas. Then they see stuff and they get excited, and then they catch the vision, and then they start becoming advocates for what you're doing, and then they want to try it out themselves, and then they start using it, and then they'll start referring you. And it is painstakingly slow. It's quite, it's irritating actually how slow it is. But that's what we've worked. That's what's working for us and worked for us so far. It would be nice if we could speed it up, and there are other levers and channels that we can use to grow more quickly. But that is a method that sort of works. In that, the key message is the spirit of co-creation, and maybe leading with something around, I'd like to validate some ideas I have with you, or validate something with you. We'll kick off a conversation.
That's really good, Patrick. Thank you. That's really helpful. And I think that lesson is, again, that it's, the amount of time that you need to put into this is really important. And unfortunately, our systems don't allow for that time. We tend to have, we have targets we have to reach, and we have to have done this by this point. Well, not everybody, but, we do, don't we? And we don't normally have a target, which is about really understanding your context. That's, which would be great if we did. And I think we all think in this work, it's really important when you're having those early conversations with funders or with whoever you're working with, to stress that you need to put that time in, that is where you need to front load your effort to make sure that this is possible. God, it gets complicated. Alison, you were going to say something. Have you got last 20 seconds? Did you want to
only very similar, really. I was just going to say, picking up the point about early adopters, that those are the key people that I find to work with at the beginning, and exactly as Patrick was saying, so using that sort of co-creation and those quick questions about if we were going to do this, what would be useful. Okay, countdown. So basically, early adopters, using early adopters.
No, that's definitely the case, really.
Oh, I have to take a breath. Great.
Right, we all back?
Yeah, I think we're all back now. We had a great conversation.
I have time to get a bit more conversation. That's great. I'm so pleased. It would be good to have more, but I can see this. It would be great in actually going forward to try and find more time.
Yeah.
Around this.
We made the point, and James made it again in the conversation. This is part of a 3-year journey with Ireland and in the Smartline programme. We are going to be designing a longer form programme for folk, on this call, etc. So, yeah, there will be hopefully more of this.
Yeah, definitely, and it's always really fascinating stuff. And we were really getting some really interesting points about the importance of co-production and really front-loading effort to really do that whole contextual understanding, engaging early adopters, people who you can work with, and building on that. But the fact is that we're not always given the time to do that. No. But our systems don't traditionally recognise that. But for spread work, it's so important.
So important. We said the same thing.
Support people to do this. I think that's great. So yeah, I was finishing up really now. So those were just the last key points. So, those are the key spread messages. But as I said, there are other bits that we will add into this as time goes on. But to keep being creative, work with people and test new ideas. Different things work for different people. And so it is again about spending that time to put that effort in. And also we talked about turkey sandwich a bit in our session about the importance of that and how, in fact, they can free you up because you're not trying to concentrate on everything.
Yeah.
If you really understand where your focus is on what your thing is and what it is you're really passionate about as well, that really helps actually a lot of people. I've had some interesting conversations with turkey sandwiches where people have suddenly realised why they're doing this in the first place.
Oh, wow.
You get stuck into doing it. Yeah, exactly. And you suddenly realise the passion that you have, and then that actually also helps as well in the work that you do.
Centres you again.
So I think that's it from me, and then I'm going to hand back to...
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I think, this was really part of an introduction to the AHSN into the Smartline programme. I recognise there's a couple of people from outside the Smartline programme, which is obviously focused on Cornwall. If you're not eligible for the Smartline work going forward, please be in touch with the AHSN anyway, because we do lots of work in our region and we're part of 15 AHSNs in the country. So do reach out to us if you want to learn more about this programme. We do run lots of spread academies with Sarah and the team in our region and increasingly outside of the region as well. So really it was just final thing and opportunity to perhaps share a few things in the chat box, but also again after this call as well. We've got 2 more of these sessions now, one on building on some of the things around evaluating for spread and how you look at that sort of prototype piloting stage, so that'll be particularly relevant for those projects, but also those that are now in lots of places. How do you really understand and measure and using evaluation methods, how do you particularly get into the detail of that turkey sandwich that we talked about today? And then we have the 3rd session around navigating the NHS in particular, which is a big part of our world, not relevant to everybody on the call, but it'll be relevant to those that might be looking to get commissioned. And how do you or want to collaborate more with the NHS generally and have a greater relationship with the NHS? So that'll be the sort of 3rd instalment. But this is part of a 3-year programme. And so the next step for us is to work with James and the team on designing a slightly longer format for key teams. And I was really keen from today and over the next 2 sessions, for those that are joining us for the next 2, to learn a little bit about some of the enablers and barriers that you're facing right now. And that was really, really useful and instructive, I think, hearing from some of you in the breakout session. So we'll collect that. But maybe particularly thinking what would, particularly out of what you've heard today, what would be really helpful for us to maybe focus on if we deliver a longer format of this workshop. So if you perhaps, if there's anybody that wants to share some insights, please raise your voice now. Or if you want to just write over the next minute in the chat box, or if you're just absorbing loads of stuff and you're a bit more of a reflective person like me, you might want to kind of, go away and think through, and perhaps James and me can reach out to you to get your thoughts as well. So I see from Patrick from Joy talks about case studies. Patrick, do you want to sort of extrapolate a little bit on what you mean by case studies?
It'd be nice to hear examples of what others have done.
Have achieved.
And like you gave us a massive long list of like tactics that we could use. It'd be nice to hear like how have tactics been deployed elsewhere in this space. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. And certainly in the 3-4 day thing that we do, I think, Sarah, we get into quite a lot of case studies, don't we? And examples.
Yeah, we do love that.
But that would be good, and maybe making them available to you in some format as well, Patrick. Thank you. That's fantastic. I'd be keen to get more depth of the theory. Sarah has been summarising it, of course, absolutely. So that's Kathy. Is there any part of the theory that grabs you, Kathy, that you think as an innovator, that for you personally, this would be an area that you'd like to sort of fixate on? Or?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself then and failing miserably. Obviously you just skimmed, you only skimmed, but some of it sounds really fascinating. So it would just be, more, just trying to work out who we're trying to spread change to, like that. They looked like a normal distribution curve, but I know, it wasn't containing that information. But that one, the whole, who to focus at. And so at the minute, I'm rolling with people who are getting me instantly. And then we're rolling with that, and then we're at pilot stage, collaboration stage, but then how to then take it further would be really,
fantastic.
That would be, thanks.
Well, we can absolutely do that. And I think Nikki Dix from Intentional Hubs had the same question as well around, how can we join access to the three? Well, if you're in the Smartline program, if you're part of that collaborative, then absolutely you'll have access to a longer format. It won't be, we used to do it in Los Angeles, it'll be in Cornwall, and it'll probably be virtual at the moment, but absolutely. And so really keen for those that are wanting to do that, it'd be great to hear from you over the next 2 sessions if you're able to join, and get a bit more insights from you as to how we can co-design something that will fit for your purpose, because we talk about context and contextualizing this stuff. So I'm going to let you all go now, right at the end, just to say, there's a last slide, I think, Sarah, just on Smartline as a program. So do get in touch. I think it was my former slides. Do get in touch on the Smartline project if you want to hear more, and we'll send these slides out afterwards as well. So massive thank you to Sarah and the team for organising today, and for a great whistle stop tour. So look forward to seeing you on the next session in a week or so's time, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, James. Thank you.
Just the last compliance mention. So Smartline is an ERDF project, and it's a partnership project led by the University of Exeter, Coastline Housing, Volunteer Cornwall, Cornwall Council, and the South West Academic Health and Science Network. If anyone's got any questions or queries, do contact us, Emma or myself, or the South West Academic Health and Science Network, and we'll come back to you. Thanks all.
Thank you, James, for that compliance. Take care.